Hey everyone, Andy Rafael from eTeknix.com, and we said we were going to do this. Been a long time since we did a Q&A, and I have Brandon with me. He's going to at least try and help me sort of answer some of the questions and stuff. So for anyone who doesn't know, we did put out a question on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, as well as Discord, asking you guys for your questions, whether it be about the state of the industry, products coming out, how we do things here, all that kind of stuff. And I just think it's a great way of making content for the channel. So hopefully you guys get something out of this. We've got about 30 questions to go through. I didn't know what to expect, but what we're going to do is split this into a few parts. But before we get into that, here's a quick word from this video sponsor. Hello mate, you alright? Yeah, just got all the bits for my banging new gaming PC. Just got to put it together. It's going to be so much better than yours. Oh, right. What did you get then? The latest Intel 12th gen processor, a feature-packed motherboard, and 32 gig of DDR4 memory. See? Miles ahead of yours. You realise that board needs DDR5 memory, don't you? Don't tell me you went and bought the wrong stuff. DDR4 is so 2014. I can't believe you was that stupid. What? No, you're joking. What should I get then? For me, I'd be looking at Corsair's newest Vengeance DDR5 kits, or if you're wanting that all-important RGB, then go for the Dominator Platinum RGB. Oh, you are a lifesaver, thanks, but where can I find out more? By clicking the link in the description below, of course. And you call me the stupid one. Okay, so I mentioned we have about 30 questions. When I put the whole thing out on Twitter, YouTube, you never know kind of what you're going to get in terms of responses. Sometimes, you think, oh, this is going to be great, and no one responds. Then other times, people come back with just so many questions, and I think we've got some good ones here. So we've kind of gone through a few of the questions already, just so we both know what we're going to be talking about roughly. And I think there's some really interesting talking points, don't you think?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So let's kick it off with, is overclocking dead? Now, I'm kind of a firm believer. Anyone who's watched any of our videos will know my stance on this. I kind of think it's been dead for many, many years. Not like dead, but like at a point where it's just not what it once was. Do you agree with that, or?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that, because products have now gotten to a point where they're so good at overclocking themselves. There's no need to do it yourself unless you're trying to break a world record. Yeah,
I definitely think there's like still a market for overclocking if you're doing it on the extreme end of the scale. So we're talking liquid nitrogen, dry ice, even custom loop water cooling to a certain degree. EVGA have now brought out products which, you can delid your processor and put it underwater, which I think is quite cool. I think they only did like a limited run on it though, maybe 100 units, something like that. Probably most of them actually went to like tech media reviewers and, modders and things like that. But yeah, I think you're right. What happens when you have the likes of, I guess, Precision Boost Overdrive on AMD, you have Turbo Max technology on Intel, then you've got on the GPU side, you have, boosting technology. It's all based around thermals and power. And generally speaking, when you are overclocking, if you open up something, like GPU-Z, for instance, you can actually see what the limiting factor is. It will tell you what's actually limiting its performance at that very one time under the sensors tab. And it gets to a point where if it has the thermal headroom and the power kind of limit headroom, you can push it. But then it's going to get to a point where you've pushed it so far that, generally speaking, what happens is the heat generates so quickly that it has to actually downclock itself. And we even found with the AMD graphics cards, right, it was better to undervolt it than to actually try and push it through maximum power, raising the power limits as well as the temperature limits. I mean, you found that, right?
Yeah, I mean, even when we did overclock GPUs, you're only getting like 1 to 2 frames a second here or there.
Yeah.
The gain you're gaining from overclocking it is so pointless compared to its default speed that there's just no reason for it unless you really desperately need that 2 frames a second.
Yeah, I mean, I love that expression, is the juice worth the squeeze? And I think that is really quite paramount for that situation, that scenario, because, okay, is the juice worth the squeeze? Is the performance worth the downside? So, okay, I've got this much extra performance, like you say, 2 frames per second in some cases. I mean, we did have some GPUs that were getting, in some cases like 12 to 16 frames per second difference, which is huge in like one game.
Yeah, really easy to run games.
Yeah.
I think CSGOs and stuff.
Yeah. I think even Death Stranding gave us some like really sort of landish results. But when you go across a broad spectrum of games, I mean, generally when we do our overclocking, it's, I don't know, like 4, maybe 5 games just to get a rough idea. One of them's multiplayer, one of them's single player, one of them's competitive, just to paint a better picture. There wasn't really much in it. But you were finding that temperatures were rising, power was rising, which especially in a time where electricity costs an absolute fortune, that's another factor that you have to consider that, I don't know, is the extra performance, that really, really small, sort of 2 frames per second average, worth an extra 50 watts, 100 watts of power, which, is going to cost you an extra 3 pence per hour to actually run in electricity costs. I don't know, it's a bit of a tricky one. So I think... the R&D that AMD, Intel, NVIDIA have actually done with their products and their technology is better than what you can do manually.
They've worked wonders to prevent you from spending the time to waste your time.
Yeah, no, completely agree with that. Okay, next one. In hindsight, was EVGA's exit from the GPU market the right thing to do? Where do you see EVGA 2 or 3 years from now? That's a tricky one because... I haven't got a crystal ball. Do you have one?
Not with me.
Not with you. Okay, so I want to tread really carefully here because I don't want to it's all NVIDIA's fault. That's why EVGA have gone. But we all know the reasons why EVGA no longer do NVIDIA graphics cards. There was, I guess, the political side of it. EVGA were finding out about new products about the same sort of time as consumers were. That doesn't really give them a chance to do anything, to innovate, to bring something new to the market other than what everyone else is doing. So they're all kind of in the same boat that, okay, let's launch a product. Well, why would you buy the EVGA over the Asus or over the MSI? They're all pretty much the same. And I think that's what we're finding now, that graphics cards, for instance, are overclocking about the same. Performance-wise, in terms of the cooling potential, they're about the same, give or take. You can always find, based on fan curves, one maybe performs better in the cooling department but is a lot louder, or is quieter but then doesn't give you as good a kind of temperatures and things like that. It's, I don't know. So for anyone who doesn't know, Brandon does all of our testing, whether it be CPUs, GPUs, cases, memory, all that, motherboards, all that kind of stuff. So he's probably got the better understanding. I just look at the results and script something up based on that. I mean, what have you found with sort of the latest products? Is there any innovation within that? Is that why EVGA are no longer producing?
In terms of innovation, all of the innovation comes from the spec itself. When you're looking at individual cards from different manufacturers, you're, much like overclocking, getting a very small gain with between each card. Yeah. And I'm gonna come out and say, honestly, I think it mostly comes down to aesthetics.
Yeah, I'd say aesthetics are probably more important now than they've ever been. And I mean, there are some graphics cards out there that look absolutely amazing. The Sapphire 7900 XTX Nitro Plus, absolutely beautiful card. Kind of looks like it was designed with Black Apple and then some RGB was stuck on it.
AMD reference cards and NVIDIA's founders cards, they are gorgeous, and the design and build of them, they feel so good. Yeah, I mean, the NVIDIA founders card is just so well balanced with the weight and the fact that they've hidden all of the screws apart from on the I/O. It's just, you can tell a lot of thought has gone into the aesthetics. But then when you drill down to the other side of things, performance, in terms of, actual raw computing performance, ray tracing, all that stuff, as well as the performance of the cooler, it's pretty much of a muchness, right? There's not much in it. So why would you spend $200 more for this one over that one? And things like that. And it does make it tricky. I think EVGA did very well at handling the situation, in the fact that they didn't just completely close the door, did they? No, they sort of, I don't know, allowed it to be open that they could come back in the future to produce graphics cards. And that was the key important thing, because they didn't say NVIDIA graphics cards, did they? They could easily come back with AMD if they felt that's what they wanted to do. Yep. Because you've got people who are massive fans of EVGA to the point where it doesn't matter what company they're making cards for. They'll be like, well, I want an EVGA card. I know someone like that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you definitely get people who are brand they have brand allegiance, right? So like Brandon loves Razer stuff, so Razer could probably produce something, let's call it subpar, and there is still a following for, I'm not saying you specifically, but there is a following within Razer, very much like Apple. People would just buy it because of who it's made by, even if it's maybe not even the superior product, which is quite interesting. EVGA still have other parts within the ecosystem, cases, power supplies, coolers, motherboards, but I don't know anyone with an EVGA AIO. I don't know anyone with an EVGA case. And when it comes to motherboards, they're on the high end. They are aimed at overclocking, hence why they have like 2 DIMM slots instead of 4 and things like that. So graphics card was always going to be like, it's like 90% of their business. So I think they need to do something to, get into these other segments in a bigger way, which is probably harder than it's ever been when you've got the likes of Corsair having complete market dominance when it comes to coolers, power supplies, casings, right? So what do EVGA do? Do they just like, I don't know, double down their efforts? Do they have to come out with like new products that innovate? What do you think?
They're in an awkward position for sure, but there's no doors closed by them stopping doing this, because there's no reason they couldn't jump back in next time there's a GPU launch and NVIDIA learns from their mistakes, having lost a partner this time.
What was interesting is like there wasn't really any chatter from NVIDIA. It wasn't like, we're sorry or anything like that, because I mean, they're never going to do that. They're never going to hold their hands up and say it was their fault. And I'm not saying it is their fault. There was definitely something going on, and obviously we don't all know the full story, but yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what the future holds for EVGA, because like you say, the door isn't closed completely. They could go back to producing NVIDIA graphics cards. They could do AMD graphics cards. We've seen brands do that in the past, completely ditch NVIDIA and go in favor for AMD. Either way, I think they've got an uphill struggle to a certain degree just with what they're producing at the moment.
They're such a well-known and well-loved company that they're probably still gonna find their way through it. It's going to be a struggle for a bit.
The other thing is they've got like world-class warranties. Their warranty is better than 99% of the companies out there who produce similar products. So they do have that going for them, and their customer service, the forums and stuff like that. Even, some of the people like Jacob at EVGA, who is like very prevalent on Twitter and things like that, which, I don't know, puts faith into the consumer again for a company who, I don't know, a lot of companies just seem faceless. EVGA are maybe ever so slightly different with that. Yeah. When do you think GPUs and CPUs will... I've got to do it. Peak. A lot of them seem to be at standard now. It's hard to imagine them getting that much better. Again, I think we kind of covered a little bit of that with like the overclocking and sort of having innovation and things like that. I would say it's a tricky one, because obviously when you look at like GPUs, for instance, AMD and NVIDIA, they've changed their process node so that they've gone down to, 4 nanometer, 5 nanometer, mixture of 5 and 6 and stuff like that. And that allows them to make a more efficient product. So like, all I can imagine is they do this, the guys who are, behind the scenes, they go, right, we made this amazing efficient product. And they're like, yeah, but the competition are doing something so much better, we know. Okay, well, what we need to do then is, now that we've made it really, really efficient, let's cram more stuff into it. And you're always going to have that, because they're trying to make an efficient product, but also trying to push the boundaries as well. And it's kind of 1 step forward, 2 steps back, because if they didn't push the boundaries, they would just have an amazing product that is efficient, but then the competition would come in and they're, oh, well, ours is 50% better. Yeah, but it uses 100% more power. And I don't know, it's striking that balance, I guess.
Yeah, and give it enough time. Features like ray tracing will be a standard, and every card will be amazing at it, and video games will just use it all the time.
Yeah, I mean, especially now that AMD are actually, let's say, comparative when it comes to ray tracing performance. They didn't do so well on the 6000 series. It wasn't fantastic. No, I mean, the weird thing is, and I think it's quite funny, is NVIDIA are on like 3rd generation ray tracing sort of performance and stuff now. AMD are on 2nd generation, and they are almost as good. So that's quite funny that NVIDIA have had more time to perfect it, and AMD are only just behind. So when they get to 3rd generation, they're on 4th. We'll like that gap bridge even closer. I don't know, it's more exciting now than ever. I know not everyone is into ray tracing. We all know NVIDIA are all in when it comes to ray tracing, but not everyone is sold on the fact, depending on the games that you're playing. If you're into multiplayer or competitive, ray tracing just doesn't have a place there. And I don't think it ever will, because you don't need to notice that as you're running around getting 500 frames per second. I mean, you play Apex a lot, right?
Yes.
would ray tracing even like bother you if it was there or not? Because you wouldn't notice it because it's so fast paced.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't notice it for sure, but if we did get to a point where cards could just do it without breaking a sweat, then there's no reason to not include it, right?
Yeah, I guess so. It is a tricky one, but that's kind of my point of, yes, performance is at a certain point where, if anything, performance-wise, when you look at the RTX 4090, even the 7900 XTX, we're actually now bottlenecked by the CPUs, and that's why we're waiting on the likes of the 7000 X3D parts, which are going to open up the pathway for that. And I always said the 5800 X3D was like the gateway. I was more interested about what was to come with that technology as opposed to just that product. It's a great product, but it's more about what it meant for future products. And that's going to alleviate any bottlenecks and allow you to really harness the performance potential, especially in the likes of, Microsoft Flight Sim. Like, without an X3D part, it sucks on everything, doesn't it?
Unless you use
DLSS3. Yeah, which is obviously an upscaling technology, and you're kind of moving the goalpost ever so slightly because it is artificial, isn't it?
Yes.
It's an artificial technology where you're actually rendering at a lower resolution and upscaling it. Admittedly, it looks a lot better than it did when it first hit Cyberpunk, where it was all grainy and horrible.
It's pretty seamless.
Yeah, it is a lot better depending on the game, and it's that whole chicken and the egg thing of the technology has to be there, and then the games have to be developed for it. The games couldn't be developed for it, and then it can't go the other way. It has to go that way.
Yeah, but in terms of, as the question asked, have we peaked in technology? It's a careful balance of wait for this to catch up before you head up, and it's always going to, if this is not caught up yet, this is going to slow down as it catches up. Then when it's caught up, it speeds up again, and then catch up while this is slow, speed up again. It's always been like that for years.
It's almost like, I'm going to try and create an analogy. It's almost like having a car that's 700 horsepower, can do like 0 to 60 in 3 seconds, and running it on like the worst tires in the world. Like, there's always going to be something holding you back, or driving along at these crazy speeds with a handbrake on. There's always going to be one factor that kind of keeps you there while the other factors trying to like push forward. And that's why when we test CPUs and things like that, we test a certain way at a lower resolution to show the performance of that, because otherwise, I mean, it doesn't show anything when you're running the same graphics card on multiple processors, because the performance is basically the same due to bottlenecking and stuff like that. So there's an argument for, I guess, yes, we're at the peak, but no, we're not at the peak because of other variables and factors and things like that.
Yeah, I suppose you could say we're at the peak at the moment, but that peak's going to shift.
Yeah, I guess the peak at the moment for that generation at the specific moment in time.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that could change for a variety of different things. The hardware that you pair with it, the drivers, the software, even like Windows 11 opens up extra performance if you're using Intel processors that can change the affinity based on efficiency cores, performance cores, and things like that. So the product was there, but the software wasn't quite ready. And now that it is, you get that extra performance, and who doesn't love free performance?
And hardware evolves with each other.
Yeah.
And software has a key part to play as well. With so many factors, it's hard to say definitively if we've peaked.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so next one. Would GPUs benefit from releasing a cheaper lower end with more overclocking headroom, or is the current direction of releasing them practically squeezed to their limit, and is that working for both consumers and manufacturers? So we spoke about this off camera, and it's a really interesting one because obviously we spoke about performance and how overclocking is kind of dead in the grand scheme of things. And I think if you produced a lower end product that had huge amounts of headroom, Silicon Lottery would play so much as a major factor and a major part of that if we were to buy the same product and it was, based on Silicon Lottery as to how far we can overclock, which still does play a part even now, if we paid $1,000 for a graphics card, exactly the same, I don't know, we both had the Sapphire Nitro Plus or whatever, and mine managed to give me 5% extra performance, and your exact identical model only gave you 1%, you'd feel like pretty jibbed, wouldn't you? You'd be like, oh, well, that sucks.
Yeah, at that point, you'd start to feel ripped off.
Yeah, definitely. And, the internet is a wonderful place for it, that people will talk about, oh, my card does this and my card does that. Not just graphics cards, but processors as well. And yeah, you'd feel like, well, hold up, why have I spent the same, but I've got this? I know, I'll return my card and then I'll buy another one of that because there's always the hope that that one might perform better. So I think returns would go up for starters, and yeah, everyone would feel ripped off. Even people, if I bought mine and I had 5%, I'd be like, you know, that's good. I'm happy with that. Oh, but I've just read that this guy got like an extra 9% from his. Right, now I'm going to send mine back. And then companies would actually start losing money, I think.
Yeah, because if consumers aren't happy, consumer comes first, right?
Yeah. The customer's always right, and all of that. Which, you know,
if the customer has had that card for a specific amount of time and they've said, I'm not happy with it, it's not performing how I was expecting it to, there's not any argument you can make there.
No.
And if you were to say, well, that's what you get because that's kind of how that product works, you've just lost a huge amount of like customer audience base because so many people are going to see that. That's how you handle that situation and go, well, that's terrible. Why would we buy from you?
Yeah, and the weird thing is, you know, whenever you're looking at anything in the world, there's websites out there like, you know, in the UK we have Trustpilot and things like that, and you can read reviews on things, and I guarantee you, bad news travels faster than good news. I mean, when was the last time you or any of, you know, our viewers bought a product and went, do you know what? I'm going to go write a really nice review. This is an amazing product, blah, 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 blah. No. But as soon as it goes wrong, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe this. It's terrible. And people will always to shout about a bad product or a bad experience as opposed to a good experience.
Tell you what, the launch of Cyberpunk is the perfect example of that. Because it was buggy at start and so many people were complaining about it constantly.
Yep.
But when you really drill down to it, it was a functional, fun game.
Yeah, definitely.
And loads of people were making it out to be this terrible experience based on the bugs they were experiencing, which a lot of the time weren't even game-breaking.
No, I think the problem with Cyberpunk was it took so long for the game to be developed that it shouldn't have had the bugs in the first place.
Yeah.
If it was like in development for 2 years or something, people would probably have seen past that a little bit more. But because it was in development for 9 years, something like that almost, like from its initial announcement back in 2012.
You would assume that it was in development before they made that announcement.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
Possibly 10 plus years.
Yeah, it's not like they just go, we're going to release a thing without like any prior anything. You know, they must have storyboarded it or at least had an idea as to what the plot was going to be, what platforms it was going to be, all that kind of stuff that goes on behind the scenes.
What platforms is a difficult one when it's so long ago.
Yeah. I mean, look at GTA, that works, right? Multiple platforms, all of the platforms, past, present, and future, and then future.
Skyrim, play that on your Amazon device.
Yeah, it kind of gets to, you know, flogging a dead horse is definitely the expression I'd use on that one. Okay, next one. Have you ever looked back on your old videos and just wondered how you got where you are now?
This is definitely a question for you, as opposed to me.
Yeah, I mean, when I started YouTube, I was probably about your age, I think. Like 10, 11 years ago. I'm 35 now. You're like, what, 22?
I'll be 23 soon.
Okay, so yeah, sort of 10, 12 years ago, something like that. I mean, I've got a lot grayer, as our Patreons definitely like to point out at every available opportunity, which is quite funny. I mean, I'm always constantly laughing about it. Thanks, guys. Yeah, I mean, there's so many different factors to it. Luck is definitely one of them. I like to think, the weird thing is, when I started eTeknix, I started it as a video review website, and this was like before YouTube was even a big thing. We used to upload videos onto the web space and then ran out of bandwidth and stuff, which was quite funny. But it was before, you know, even some of the big guys out there who are pushing, you know, millions of subscribers. And I do sit there, hindsight and all that, and look at, God, if I stuck with it, where would I be now? You know, what kind of, you know, sphere would I be in terms of subscriber count, view count, and things like that. But there's no point sort of dwelling on that because that didn't happen and so forth. Instead, we changed everything over to the written side, and then now we're doing kind of both. We've got the written side and the video side, so we're catering for both audiences. Would I change anything? Yeah, I mean, yeah, I would have stuck with it and stuff, but again, there's no point dwelling on it, and it is what it is. So,
as they say, hindsight is always 20/20.
Hindsight is bliss. I love that expression. Hindsight is bliss because, yeah, if I could have done this, then this would have been so much better. It would have been bliss, right? So, yeah, it's a tricky one to look at, but, you know, a lot of it I wouldn't change. The only thing I probably would change is sticking with it back then instead of kind of having a hiatus from it. But, yeah.
But then, personally, though, to build on that question, would you actually change anything? Because you're at a point now, you're happy, you've got a family you love. would you risk not having that?
No, I mean, there's always that whole thing, isn't there, of, I think, in the UK, definitely. I think it's the same in other countries, probably more in the Western world. You do it one of two ways. You either have a family really young, and then you realise you're too late to have a career, or you sort of, do the whole career thing, and then, oh no, I'm now in my 40s. I don't want kids when I'm in my 40s. It's too late. That ship has sailed. I was really lucky that I managed to do both at the same time. So I've got two kids. One of them's 9, one of them's 11. My missus kind of brought the kids up, and I was working from home a lot, so I was kind of around when I needed to be, but it allowed me to kind of do both at the same time. So if anything, yeah, I was blessed and really lucky in that situation that I could do both at the same time. I wouldn't change that for the world. Definitely not. Okay, so this kind of moves on from that question. What advice would you give to a young tech tuber starting out in the industry today? Don't do it. That would be my first thing, because it's such a tough space to be in. I mean, we've seen not just YouTubers, but traditional tech media websites just vanish, haven't we, over the last couple of months, actually. There was some really big ones who were there from the beginning, and they've now gone. So it's probably a tougher time now than it ever has been. Do you think?
Yeah.
I don't know. That would be my first thing of, yeah, don't do it. But if you are going to do it, what advice would you give?
Well, I suppose the advice I'd give, if you are to do it, would be the same advice I'd give anyone. Is find something that makes you stand out, but don't make it fake.
Yeah. Fake is hard. I mean, there's always that expression, fake it till you make it sort of thing, and then it becomes natural. But if you have to fake something and it feels so forced, then you've got to keep up that pretense. And I guarantee you, a year, 2 years, 3 years down the line, it's going to completely exhaust you and just completely drain everything that you do, that you're going to be in a situation like, I can't put up with this anymore. This is just not me. And you're probably just going to quit.
It's probably a large part of why lots of YouTubers or companies just kind of either stop or take a complete U-turn on the kind of thing they're doing.
Yeah. Especially influencers, isn't it? The ones when you open up a video, it's like, hey guys, it's your boy. And it's like, you don't talk like that. Why are you talking like that? How long are you going to keep that up for? And a lot of them just, fade into the abyss because they can't keep up that fake pretense. And then you see these videos where you'll see one of these really big famous influencers walking down the street, and someone's like, oh my God, it's you. Can I take a picture? And they're like, get away from me. And it's like, oh, so you're not actually like that in real life. And you have to keep up that image, especially when you get large, in the public and stuff like that as well. I mean, it was really weird for me. I was in Tesco, and literally I asked them where the tomatoes were. It was really, really strange. I was out shopping, and I was like, I can't see tomatoes anywhere. Can you tell me where they are? And the guy just sort of looked at me. He was like this, and I was like, what's going on? He almost went into a ninja pose. It was like this, and I was like, what's going on? And he was like, you're on YouTube. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, I've watched your videos. And for me, that was a big thing, because we were on 60,000 subs at the time, and I was like, wow, someone recognized me at 60,000 subs. Imagine if you had millions. And again, you can't just be like, get the hell away from me. You have to be a nice person, because you're selling your image when you're a personality on YouTube and things like that. So, basically, long and short, don't fake it. Be yourself, but do something that makes you stand out from the crowd. Otherwise, you're just doing the same thing that everyone else does, which is difficult in this industry.
And do something you find fun, because if you're doing something you don't enjoy, you're going to get sick of it.
Yeah, definitely. Do video, if you're doing videos and that, definitely do something that you actually enjoy, because that will come across in the video as well. Q&As like this are quite difficult, because you have to think on the spot, as opposed to our normal videos where I script it and I just read off a teleprompter. But some people actually prefer this kind of off-the-cuff stuff like this, which, hopefully this video does well and we get lots of views. If we don't, then, we won't do any more. Which is funny, because we're doing another 2 videos after this of the same thing. We're splitting this into 3 parts. So, is what it is.
See how it goes.
Yeah. Okay, next one. Best brands to work with. Top 5 you currently work with and why they are the best. I'm not doing that. That is literally shooting myself in the foot. I mean, we work with pretty much everyone, whether they're big, AMD, Intel, NVIDIA, all the way down to Asus, MSI, Gigabyte, down to, case manufacturers, NZXT, Corsair and that. And a lot of them are just generally easy to work with. Some are easier than others. Some of them we have not a bias, but we like their products personally, it's really hard, because we do have to separate the bias and stuff. I guarantee, because you like Razer products, if we had a Razer product come in, you'd have a subconscious in your mind that you would, I don't know, maybe see past certain flaws.
Yeah.
Because you like the brand and stuff like that. And it's really hard to sort of, get past that. But it has to be done to remain kind of, separate in how you do things and stuff like that.
If you're reviewing something that you'd personally want to buy, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to try to ignore the flaws.
Yeah.
To be like, oh, that's not a problem, because I don't want to feel like I've wasted my money on something with this flaw.
Yeah, I think that's why, like, in the last 6 months to a year, we've really narrowed our lane with videos. We used to do videos on keyboards and mice and headsets and stuff like that. Generally speaking, then videos wouldn't do as well as CPUs, GPUs, motherboard, like the bread and butter stuff. And that's because our audience prefer that and the more technical nitty gritty. And the beauty is, because we're not influencers, and I hate it when we're called influencers, because no bad word against influencers, but generally speaking, they are paid to promote a product. So one week they will say, this is the best product in the world. The next week they will say the competitor product is the best product in the world, because they're getting paid to do so. There's no fact, there's no, it's all based around the fact that they're getting paid to do it. And they hide it sometimes in such a way that it's not sponsored or an ad or anything like that. And that makes it tricky. Whereas our decisions are solely based on facts, aren't they? That's why I literally hired you to sit there all day, every day, testing stuff.
Because there's a very crucial difference between being paid to do an advert and being paid to pretend you like this product.
Yeah.
And so many people don't declare that.
No.
It's like, at the start of this video, we had a sponsor spot.
Yep.
That is something we were paid to say.
Yep.
But if I was to say at this very moment during a review that I didn't like something, the company can't do anything about that, because that's my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same when companies say to us, can we read the review before it goes live? It's like, no. When it comes to reviews, separate to editorial, like advertorial or sponsored videos, when they say, can we have a look at this before? It's like, no. Or in the case of a video for fact checking, and we want to make sure that we're hitting, the information in the right way, I might send it to a brand if we have the time. Generally, we don't. Just to get their opinion on that. And they will come back and say, I don't agree with you on this. I don't agree with you on that. This is slightly different to, what we were expecting, this, that, and the other. And I'm like, cool. Still going out as it is, sort of thing.
Yeah,
unless there is something fundamentally wrong where we're like, oh, like this is just completely wrong and we didn't see it. We needed that second set of eyes, because especially when you're watching back yourself, it's a nightmare, because I do it at like 1.25 speed and I'm like, and if I see something that maybe doesn't register properly, I'll rewind, drop the speed back down and sort of, all right, we need to go re-voice over this or refilm this, or the testing's wrong in this. Like people pointed out the other day that one of our, Death Stranding was wrong for like 4080s and stuff.
Yeah.
I think it was a fact of when we were running it, DLSS was turning itself on and off. So we retested everything. And if you want to see that chart, we'll put it up on Patreon for anyone to sort of see. But yeah, we had to go back through that, and it's, shows that we are completely transparent with the way that we do things.
Yeah, and since I've started working here, I think at least once we've had an issue where there was actually something wrong with the product.
Yeah.
Like, the company says, that's actually just not right. We need to look at that because it's not right. Yeah.
I mean, we're not out there to like hurt a company. We obviously want to help a company try and, sell their products so they spend more money with us in terms of advertising and things, but we're not going to sugarcoat it. We're always going to be completely honest and unbiased with, if it's a bad product, it's a bad product. And a lot of that, again, comes down to facts. If we're doing GPUs or CPUs and we go, right, price, performance, when you're looking at the performance and the value of it, yeah, it's actually like really good, or no, actually it's terrible in comparison to this product or that product, or even last generation. 4000 series NVIDIA was a prime example of that. In some cases, the 3000 series is the better buy. So,
yeah. In terms of value, yeah, especially if you can go second hand, which I know. I said the word second hand.
Yeah. No, I completely get it. So, hopefully that sort of answers that we are more based on fact than just opinion and stuff like that. Okay, next one. Has PC gaming component QE, or specifically the manufacturing process, reached an all-time low? I'm not even sure what QE is. I'm guessing they mean like quality engineering or quality control. No, assurance would be with an A.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Has PC gaming component QE, or specifically the manufacturing process, reached an all-time low? I think we touched on that a little bit, with the whole NVIDIA or AMD bringing it down to like, so-and-so process node and things like that. I think, it's always open-ended. We never know what the future is going to hold. You like to think that the product that's going to be coming out this year is already developed and sort of, at a point of almost release. Products that are going to be coming out in the next couple of years, there is a roadmap for it and stuff like that. I think it's a tricky one to answer, don't you think?
Especially with large-scale manufacturing, it's so difficult to pin down these small issues that come up once a product has been released.
Yeah.
It's like the 4090 power connector thing.
Yep.
I'm sure the testing done in-house at NVIDIA was to such a small scale compared to a product release that they never would have noticed that. But as soon as there's thousands of people out in the wild with these faulty connectors, all of a sudden it becomes a problem.
Yeah. I mean, same with, these 7000 series for AMD, where they're saying, the vapor chamber, this, that, and the other. It was a small selection of, ours has been fine. So, I can't really comment on that too much because we haven't experienced it. And again, bad news travels faster than good news. So there's always going to be things like that. Luckily, a lot of problems that we do see in the industry with products can be fixed through driver updates, software. So much of it is that. We all remember that game. What was it? There was a game from Amazon Games, wasn't there? That was literally like frying GPUs and stuff like that. And it was so funny because everyone was like, Andy, have you tried it? I was like, I'm not trying that. I'm not burning my 3090 Ti or, whatever. And again, it showed it was slightly isolated. It wasn't affecting everyone, but then it did get fixed through software. That was the only way to fix it. It was a game. So yeah, there's always going to be things. I've done this well over a decade now. There's always going to be points where it happens. It shouldn't, but it does. Not every, we don't live in a perfect world, do we?
Yeah, and ironically, a lot of the time it's like not even that big of a deal.
No. Again, bad news travels fast when you think, okay, not everyone is going on the internet and complaining about it. When they've sold this many and only that many are actually affected, it more comes down to the brand and how they handle it.
Yeah.
We had, I'm going to throw it out there, NZXT with the H1. There were problems. Let's not skirt around the issue.
Everyone knows it.
There were problems. It was how they dealt with it. And they weren't the first and they won't be the last. We've seen it time and time again with products. I remember Corsair were going to release a case. It was I want to say the 780T carbide series or something like that. It was literally, they were going to bring out a bright yellow one, but they couldn't match the plastic on the front to the metal on the side. And it was like, one was like bright yellow, like a Lamborghini yellow, and then mustard yellow. It just didn't match. So they went, right, we're just not going to release it.
Yeah, that comes down to the company specifically too. Like they weren't happy with it. Lots of companies would release it with the metal and the plastic being slightly different shades.
Yeah, and then they would get torn a new one, and that'd just be that. So again, if they can deal with it before, but then they have to think of how much can we mitigate our losses because we're going to lose a load of money on this. And now more than ever, like, business is tough for a lot of companies out there, and losing money on a product that has been in development for over a year, that's a bitter pill to swallow. Okay, last one. When do you think DDR5 will hit DDR4 prices? So it's already come down like dramatically from where it once was. It was always a tough one before AMD got into like AM5 with DDR5 because you didn't have a choice, right? It was Intel, DDR5, AMD, DDR4. So now you have options, which allows prices to sort of come down like this. And especially with the market, AM5 hasn't done, I think, as well as what AMD and their partner brands, Asus, MSI, and that have thought that it would do.
Yeah, I think that's looking to turn around with the release of the 3D cache
definitely.
CPUs.
Yeah.
But
for gamers, definitely.
Oh yeah. And which I think is the biggest market for PCs at the moment. Is gamers, because especially after the pandemic, so many people have gotten into work from home systems that they can game on. Because people have started realizing you're spending more money, but you're saving money.
That's because they didn't have to pay for them. During COVID, I said the word. During like lockdown, when people were being sent home to work, they were going, well, I can't work from home. I haven't got a PC. Okay, we'll buy you a PC. This is what the employers were saying. So we're like, okay, what sort of budget have I got to work with? £2,000, that should buy you everything. They're like, sweet, I could buy a gaming PC for work purposes. So they'd work on it and then, have something that they could game on, maybe even sell their console because they realised PC Master Race is the way forward. Sell their console, get a little bit of money back, buy some games, or even, put towards the PC and stuff like that. So that allowed them to kind of utilise someone else's money, but to get the result that they wanted. And that was an interesting time for sort of the industry, because everything went up. The problem that we've got now is everything, when we're dealing with companies and they're spending marketing money with us on, banners, sponsored pre-rolls, sponsored videos, advertorials, site skins on the website, all that kind of stuff, they go, sales were down last year. And I'm like, compared to what? And they're like, the year before. I'm like, of course they were, because the sales the year before were so artificially inflated that of course it looks worse. But if you look back at like now compared to 2019, it's probably actually up. And marketing 101, these companies don't realize that. So it is a tricky one. But going back to DDR5, it is coming down. It is going to get better. I said this when DDR5 first came out, that it needs time to mature. Very much like DDR4 did the same. DDR3 did the same. DDR2 did the same. Like, it's not a new thing. It's just something that happens. That's the way that the cookie crumbles. And there are going to be things that help it along, like the X3D cache CPUs that are coming out very, very soon. That's going to help it along, and just the uptake of people buying systems will obviously help supply and demand and stuff like that as well. The big problem that we had was when DDR5 first launched, you had 4800 megahertz. The difference between a fast DDR4 kit and a slow DDR5 kit, like low end, there wasn't much in it, was there? You saw that in your testing.
Yeah, in a lot of cases, you're better off with DDR4 if you have a certain budget.
With a 5800 X3D. Yeah, perfect combination. It was actually cheaper than the DDR5 equivalent.
If you insist on a new CPU, but still don't want to spend the money on a DDR5 kit, you can get DDR4 boards. Yeah, Z790 DDR4, job done. Obviously not with AMD, you can't, but yeah. No, but...
Yeah, I mean, X670 was just DDR5, so there wasn't really any choice there, so you kind of had to go Intel. But yeah, things are going to change. Things are going to get better with that. It has matured. It's fast now. You can get 7800 megahertz kits, or mega transfers as they call it. And yes,
it's difficult too, because DDR5 is a completely different manufacturing process to DDR4. It's got extra stuff on the DIMM itself.
Yeah, so they took the voltage controller from the motherboard and put it on the memory as well. So motherboard prices were actually slightly lower, even with inflation. They were slightly lower comparatively to the generation before, but then the memory prices were more because they had more components. That's just manufacturing and how it works. So
if you look at it from that perspective, it's, as a bundle, you're kind of spending the same amount of money to some degree, because one thing is cheaper while one thing is more expensive to the same degree that the other one is cheaper.
You have to look at the full picture, don't you?
Yeah, because this kit is expensive, but if you're pairing it with a cheaper motherboard, it's the same as the other way around. Yeah,
which for the most people, they don't need Z790 or X670. They go for a B series chipset and get 85-90% of what they need, in some cases even 100% of what they need, but for 60% of the cost sort of thing. So there is options, which again, having options and having the ability to decide on different things brings pricing down again. So that's gonna kind of round up this whole Q&A part 1. We have to do a part 2 and a part 3. We've got plenty more questions. So we're going to be here for the next hour and a bit producing them. And then actually at the time of filming this, we have got a live video that will be going live in a few hours for our Patreons. So if you're not subscribed to Patreon, definitely sign up to that. You're going to miss this one by the time this video comes out, but it will allow you, every month we're going to do a live kind of session where we talk about the news at the moment, answer some questions, talk to you guys on, the guys who support us on Patreon. The link for all that is down below. You also get access to behind the scenes stuff, access to our bi-weekly game night, special area on Discord, all that good stuff. I guess for now, that's part 1 done. We're going to be filming part 2, literally stop recording, start recording. But yeah, there we have it. Cheers for tuning in. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, liking a sub to the channel would be amazing. And I'll see you in the next one. Say bye, Brandon.
Bye, Brandon.
See you later, guys. Bye-bye.